Before I make the video I'd like to make, I just want to give my sympathies to the families and individuals affected, and I wish every survivor a speedy recovery, and a moment of silence perhaps for all of those who have lost their lives over the last week and a half or so in the number of mass shootings. And I suppose let's proceed. So after what happened in Texas, and since I've been filming, it sometimes takes a minute and or editing, there's been a few more shootings and stuff, but since those shootings, I keep hearing, video games is evil. There are a bunch of murder simulators across the board. All of them. They're all of them are murder simulators. Don't mind me. I'm just snuggling with the cutest good boy slash asshole cat, Minecraft, which are used in schools for smart children to use for some creative shit. Because it's basically all the creativity and fun and joy of Lego, minus having to actually clean up the Lego. Maybe they meant like this here fishing game, where you literally get to just sit in a boat that you get to row yourself, enjoy a nice sandwich, and hope to the gods that the fish bite, which they so far are not. Oh, I know, maybe they mean murder simulators like chess, amongst the many other board games, that you can play in your very home, that you can also now play online, or even just against a computer. Maybe they meant something like Subnautica, which is basically just, hey, if you played Bioshock and wanted your own Rapture, but you built it yourself, there isn't anyone on there, there's no plasmids, and it's an incredibly relaxing underwater adventure. So as you can see, calling all video games a murder simulator is a little... It just shows us literally how you literally know nothing about video games. Like, there's so many different games where you don't have to kill anything. Like, there's survival games, there's platformers, there's puzzle games, board games, sports games, racing games. I'm sure you get the picture, right? Like, the only thing you're consistently killing across the board is some time. It's a good way to burn through a few hours, but like, other than that, there's a wide variety of games where that's just not the case. That's just simply not. Which is actually really uniquely special for showing the difference between VR and not VR, because it allows me to pull this back like that, and this is how the average person plays a video game. From their couch across the room, and I'm not gonna lie, using a DualShock, using one of these, while looking at this, I just don't see how that would translate nearly as well as, say, for example, so after recent shootings, some people have noted that video games and firearms are evil. Right, and that's why this bad boy right here is totally about to do some evil shit. Right? Do something evil. Do something you know what? I'm holding it, clearly holding it back. So let me just there you go. Let it be free. Do some evil shit. Do some It's almost like it's an object, and you actually need somebody, like a human being, with will, with thoughts, dreams, and poor mental health to pick it up, and that it can't really do that without the human element picking it up. And watch, we'll give it another try. What do you? Yep, nope, still not doing it on its own. Still need that human element. See, I think the reason why the whole firearms are evil, and they need to be rendered ineffective, and they need to be regulated, which usually just means taken the fuck away and made as ineffective as possible. I think the reason why that seems like a very stupid take to me as a Canadian is, like, we have like a bunch of 16-year-olds, like at bare minimum 16-year-olds, teaching little 12-year-olds firearm safety and how to shoot specifically bolt action rifles. Unless you like happen to come from like a really poor or being a really rich core, and then sometimes you got to use more than just a bolt action rifle. Lucky bastards. But I think the reason why that it just seems stupid is because, like, we're small children just teaching small children how to shoot weapons. And we have very, very little gun violence here. I'm not going to say none, because, we do have some, but weird how little we have, considering, But let me teach you a few things that I was taught by a 16-year-old. So, you shoot, right? And then when you're all empty, you lay the rifle down with the action open, so that the inspector can slash commanding officer can in fact see that you have spent every single round, and it just lays down next to you where you're supposed to be on the prone, like you're supposed to be flat, before you're allowed to go down to the range to grab your target to see how terribly you shot. And you have to make sure that commanding officer, who is again 16 years old, clears every single individual before you walk down range, and every individual has to make sure their weapon is action open, chamber clear, and down in presentation mode. You do not, under any circumstances, put anything down barrel that you do not feel comfortable shooting. Like, even when we go down the range, like walk down the range to go grab our targets and stuff, we actually, when we lay the rifle, lay it at such an angle that it's just slightly off target from the actual thing you're shooting. And on top of that, the action is open, so there's absolutely no firing capability. As well, when you're cleaning your weapon, this is easier to demonstrate with a pistol, so I'm going to demonstrate with a pistol. You, again, never put anything down barrel from the firearm that you are not comfortable with dying or being inflicted damage. So even if you take this all apart and it's just a barrel completely detached from the gun, even then you still inspect it facing the barrel this way, not this way. Because even when it's not attached to any firing mechanism, gun safety does not go out the window. Alright? That's the sort of thing we teach our children. And, like I said, remarkably little gun violence. Again, not none, but remarkably little. Now, the video game side of that argument seems silly to me from a psychopath perspective, because honestly I kind of feel like video games make me a slightly better person and not so much a worse person. And here's why. So I, I'm like really fucked up. Like really fucked up. Like, I find all sorts of little psychopath mechanics in video games. Like, say for example, in the forest, when you go fishing, you don't actually have to grab the fish off the end of your stick right away. If you're kind of messed up and you like watching them just slowly writhe in pain as they suffocate and or succumb to blood loss, you can do that. My favorite part is that if you hit them just right, you hit an artery or a lung, and you can just sit there slowly watching them writhe in pain, gasping and gargling as they slowly can't catch their breath as their lungs slowly fills with the blood. Oh, those cries of anguish, the sweet siren song. I mean, like, everyone does a genocide run, but so few people just cut off the head of everyone of slight importance and puts those heads in a box based on association, spaced out with some guts. Granted, those are walker guts because they don't let you gut these people, but that's beside the point. So, Henri here, who did not die by our hands, by the way, I swear to the gods, I know this how this looks, but when he was a zombie, we cut his head off in the box forever, where they all live eternally. Back to the point. So the game, spoilers, is about Henri here working with us until he gets killed at the very beginning of the game to help May get Casey so that she can help supply the remnants because the remnants were all kicked out from the tower. And in the process of doing all that, little Umbra over here unfortunately perished. It's very sad. Anyway, along the way, you also meet this gentleman and his lieutenant and his little brother and their enemy faction, mortal enemy. Is technically part of the remnants, and they're technically part of the tower, but I think that was just so that you could really like red versus blue, like they have been with everything else. When in reality, they seem pretty unattached from all the rest of that. So this gentleman convinced that gentleman to tell this gentleman to kick his daughter and him out of their little survivor group, and I guess his daughter died, and then he kidnapped the brother. Not the point. I think you got to see part of it. So this gentleman loves that gentleman, and these two captains tried to keep them apart. And now they live eternally in this box. And at the very beginning of the game too, one of the first levels, this wife tries to convince you to kill her already dead zombified husband to put him out of his misery. It's still alive, as you can see, little twitches. And I just like their masks. And it just seemed fitting with the rest of the whole romance section of the box. Anyway, so we're very clear that I'm definitely unhinged. You know, it's just some people, they like to play sports or sports games. And some people might, you know, drown their sorrows in a bit of Chardonnay. I like to drown my sorrows in some blood. Because this is the one place where just because you're not at fucking peace with your fucking self doesn't mean you get to attack others. Doesn't apply. Because, I mean, nobody's really getting hurt here. They don't count because they're not people. They're just NPCs. It's definitely wrong to do something like that, but at the same time though, at least I'm doing it here and not in real life. I actually get like a little sad when games don't have psychopathic mechanics. Like, say for example, this gentleman kidnapped this gentleman because this gentleman, which happens to be the leader of the faction that gentleman used to be a part of, exiled that gentleman and I believe his daughter, and somewhere along the way the daughter unfortunately died. So he kidnapped this gentleman and then wants to storm this gentleman's compound behind me. So logic would dictate, as a psychopath, logic would dictate. All I'd really gotta do, if you ask me, is cut this guy's head off and then kill you, because you're not gonna let that slide, are you? Right? So you just... and then just right? And then you go ahead and do this, and then you will just be like, hey, Big Bad Jeff, right here. Look at his little bitch face. You take that, and then let's just go ahead and
we did what we had to do.
And we call it done, right? But whoop. But no, you know, he doesn't even recognize that we just...
Right?
Man, I'm so fucked up. That's May Benoit, and this is Umbra, her daughter.
Even the innocent. Pathetic desperation. They all
Oh no,
twisted my priorities.
that's dark. Sometimes I like to taunt them, and I'll like cut their friend's head off and like wave it in front of their head, like, hey, see this? That could be you. That could be you. Push me again, I dare you.
The world is a much
Push
better
me
place without
again.
that. You got a problem?
The world is a much
Yeah,
better
I do.
place without that.
Now, I know what you're thinking. How is he going to actually argue that all of that makes him a better person? And well, frankly, if you ever actually met me in real life, I'm like one of the politest fucking people on the planet. Curse a lot, but I give a whole lot of pleases and thank yous and all that good shit, right? Act like I give a fuck, no matter how much I don't. And it's because I'm able to just get all of that really psychopathic, like say for example, I have this roommate, and this roommate regularly does shit like leave a bunch of stuff all over the fucking stairs, and when you're walking down the stairs and you end up tripping and like fucking bashing your head off the wall, or like fucking falling down the stairs or what have you, you really fucking feel like, really just makes you wanna... How many fucking times did I fucking tell you? How many times has everyone fucking told you, stop putting shit on the fucking stairs? Fucking stop it. Stop it. And then when I'm done doing all that, I walk up to her and I'm like, hey, tripped over some shit on the stairs again. Can you please get it the hell off of there before, you know, somebody kills himself? Plus, like I'd said earlier as well, it's not all murder simulators and cutting people's heads off and gutting and all that good stuff. Sometimes it's beauty. You know, it's my two favorite things in a video game. Number one is the murder. Sweet, sweet murder. But on the other hand, a beautiful, beautiful scene. Very well done. Get the fuck out of here. Like No Man's Sky is one of the most beautiful... Here, let me just... I love that this is the load-in every time. This is the one game where it's just like every loading screen is just so beautiful. Look how beautiful that is. Gorgeous. Even this weird fungal planet still looks pretty interesting and kind of cool. And even here, there's a beautiful sunset to be seen. But that would take way too long. But yeah, my two favorite things though is just looking at pretty stuff and then just because at the end of the day, you need a certain degree of balance, right? You need the violent parts to get the anger out, and you need the beautiful parts to let you know that not everything in life is suffering and hatred and vitriol. That sometimes they're peaceful, majestic, just downright gorgeous. But that leads me to the other argument that needs to be had. Let's go back to the cemetery real quick. An argument that doesn't come up enough is family life and mental health, because having a fucked up family kind of contributes to poor mental health. And let's be honest here, poor mental health is what really leads somebody to grab a rifle, walk into a crowd, and just... because mentally healthy people don't do that. And with that, family life. Alright. Being a decent mother, a decent father, and trying to raise a decent human fucking being, a child. Alright? It's not enough discussion about that. Because, like, the shooter's mom, like, literally tried to defend them. Like, oh, don't judge my kid too harshly. He was going through some shit. Like, yeah, those kids are now going through some shit too. Thanks to your fucking kid. So, I think we will judge him pretty harshly. Ultimately, you can still be, like, the best mother figure you can possibly be, and best father figure you could possibly be, trying your best to raise the best decent human being you can possibly raise. And sometimes there's just a chemical thing up in the brain that just isn't working proper. And other times, if you are a shit, god's awful piece of filth of a mom, a shitty, god's awful piece of filth of a father, you are going to raise god's awful pieces of shit. More often than not, there are some people that learn the right lessons. Like, I believe earlier in this video I uttered the statement, just because you're not at peace with your fucking self does not mean you get to attack others. That was a lesson that was taught to me by God's awful piece of shit. That was a 40-year-old who used to tell me, a 6-year-old, about her ex-husband and how, like, he was abusive and used to hit her and was God's awful piece of cunt. She lived in terror, while also beating the shit out of me and leaving me in regular terror and very clearly not being at peace with herself and clearly taking it out on me. Like, here's a great example of what I'm talking about. I remember one year, there's these things called advent calendars. I think everywhere has them. They're like 1 to 25. They got a little piece of chocolate. You open up the piece of chocolate every day on your calendar until Christmas, and you eat the little piece of chocolate. All right, and like sometimes they would fall down some. That's not what happened in this situation. And you know, maybe being a child, my stepsister, had accidentally eaten it and forgotten. That's, again, also not what happened, because I actually figured out a few days later she'd actually somehow dropped it on the floor. It was like these doors. It's like tucked right in by the hinge. I don't know how she managed that, but she did. But we're going to get there as to how I figured that out. So anyway, nobody could find that little piece of chocolate, so automatically it had to either be me or my sister. You know, couldn't have, like, fallen in one of the later days or yada yada, right? Which, again, I know didn't happen. So me and my sister had to sit on our knees with our face in a corner for several hours before my sister convinced me to take the fall for it, even though I knew I didn't do it. So then I had to be left overnight with my face in the corner as punishment for eating the chocolate and then making my sister sit in a corner for a little while. So I had my head against the wall all night, and if I fell asleep, I'd be jostled awake and have my head slammed against the wall about 3 or 4 times, you know. And I knew if she started high, it was only going to be 3, and I was going to be lucky. You know, it's supposed to be up here, not down here, up here. So keep it there. And then I'd proceed to have to stay there for like an entire day if I was just slumped over, or a day and a night if I fell over. And if I fell over, it was also like picked up by my head, brought over to the other room, beaten, and then brought back over here before having my head slammed against the wall. And that was the environment I grew up in. That was the, you know, remember, I was over a piece of chocolate. So you can imagine amongst the many other actual fuck-ups I actually did. Oh, yeah, by the way, like 2 or 3 days later, after finally, you know, all the beating stopped, I snuck away for half a second, and I snuck into my stepsister's room and just investigated the area for literally 10 seconds and found the fucking piece of chocolate. Again, literally just in the closet door, just at the hinge down on the ground. And I've just had to kind of like stew all these years the fact that I know for a fact I got my ass kicked a ton and spent several days with my face in a corner for some shit I didn't fucking do. But, you know, and if you think that that sort of thing, that sort of environment was was good for growing a psychologically sound and mentally healthy individual, I'd like to refer you back to my box of literal actual fucking heads. Clearly, there was a few things along the way that could have been done better. And you might be thinking like, well, are you a parent? You know, because that's easier said than done. I'm not. However, I have been helping my sister raise my niece like pretty much since she was born. And I was a nanny to 2 children for several fucking years. And instead of teaching any of them the lesson that just because you're not at peace with yourself, you don't attack others, I tried to teach them the lesson that just because you're not at peace with yourself, joke about it with others. Like my niece. To this day. You know, she's like 10 or 11 now. Whenever I walk into a room and I see my niece, like I'll jokingly like, hey, square up, little one. No, I bet I could take you. Alright? But I don't actually hit my niece. Not once, you know. Despite that I'm an adult with a child in beating distance, just like my stepmom was an adult with a child within beating distance, I don't actually swing at my niece. You know, I put my dukes up, but then I just ruffle her hair. Or give her like a gentle little boop on the nose. Because I want my niece to grow up mentally healthy. And because those 2 kids I was nannying aren't mine to fuck up. So like anytime any of them were like, oh, I'm like a little, you know, afraid of this or that. Like the one kid I used to babysit was afraid of clowns. And granted, this is probably not the wisest thing I've probably ever said to the kid, but I jokingly said to him once, you ever think if you just bop a clown on the nose that it'd make that little squeaky noise every time? And the kid immediately started laughing, and I feel like he probably felt a lot less scared of clowns after that. Probably just kept picturing in the back of his head, just and a little like and I probably helped that kid at least a little bit. but I can't say for certain because I never actually, asked him if that helped any, but I like to believe it did. But there are healthy ways to teach a lesson, and she taught me the wrong, unhealthy way. And I like to believe that I'm at least trying to teach my niece the right way. It's alright to like joke about violence, but don't actually swing. I always emphasize that, like, don't actually go around attacking people. That's why I gently do that and then roughly a hair. But I don't know. But anyway, I grew up with a lot of bullies as well, and in the end, I did get my revenge. But that's just because I got into, let's just say, business, and proceeded to give every one of them the shittiest deal I could possibly give them, so that they are either enticed not to come back, or only come back when they're desperate, and I get a good profit out of it. Because at the end of the day, there's smart ways of doing things, and there's dumb ways of doing things. Like, I got my revenge, and I got pretty satisfied because I probably screwed them over way harder, especially financially, than they had ever screwed me over physically. And you know what? I feel satisfied in that. But anyway, that's my little, I'm gonna close this actually with a quick little anecdote. I used to be in psychology classes and stuff like that, like, because part of me wanted to be a therapist, but then I was like, yeah, I'm way too fucked up for that. Anyway, I want to give you an anecdote that my old professor gave me. There could be, like, a mother on her deathbed just overdosing from, like, drugs and shit, and also still crying out that, she just wants just another little bump. She'll just feel better if she just has that extra little, as she, like, kills herself that much quicker from her overdose. Even in that situation, let's say that there are twins. There isn't a guarantee that these two twins are going to fundamentally learn the exact same lesson. In this moment, one might learn that, oh my god, this is a travesty, this is awful, this is horrendous, look at the agonizing pain that my mom is in, look at like the vice drugs have on her. I have to do everything I can. I have to be a grief counselor, I have to be a drug counselor, I have to be a doctor to save her and anyone like her. The other one might learn, even in one's dying breath, there's a customer to be had. And I think that kind of hits on something that I'd said earlier, that even if you do the very best you can, sometimes there just isn't, they just aren't right. Sometimes people just aren't okay. And as much as we can blame mental health in certain instances at family life and stuff, it is still fundamentally also on the individual in question to do that here and not out there. Anyway, hope that was kind of helpful. It was probably really messed up, and gods, I hope this isn't a long video. Anyway, take care. I hope this was something.